Back to another video. I am Ramona. Hope you're going to enjoy this one. If you do, please like, share, subscribe, comment, do all the things, do some of the things, that's fine. This topic is going to be, have you ever had an encounter with a skinwalker? We'll see how many of these we can get through because there's quite a few. So, may have to do more than one video. I have a friend who has one that messes with them and pretty much always sticks around to the woods behind their house. It is on and around a very historical Native American area. My friends who live there have been paranormal investigators for years, so they've done all the debunking they can try and figure out what it is. The sounds that they hear aren't even animal-like sometimes. There will be times when they will whistle at them when they are walking in, and they'll hear that sounds like a little girl saying, "Come here," in a really soft but creepy voice. They have neighbors, but none of them have young children, and I don't think they'd let their kids stay in those woods, saying that kind of stuff at 2 or 3 a.m. They've had very loud banging on their patio door and windows simultaneously multiple times. I've been told so many stories about the encounters that they have had with it. Too many to write out here. It started happening the day they moved into that home. Before that, they never really had many paranormal occurrences in their houses, besides things that would happen within a day or two of coming home from investigations. But it never was really continued long after that. I've had similar experiences after investigating, but I've got a few good spirits who have chosen to stick around longer. The entities make themselves known in other locations to go to. I have spirit guides who I believe are with me since I was born, but these spirits I've picked up along the way are different. Some are more vocal than others, and sometimes none of them want to communicate. You just never know. I have come to notice that some places that have alleged portals will have more activity with my community of personal spirits who have decided to stay around me. Some of them followed me for specific reasons, the others just to check in on me from time to time. There are a couple who seem to be with me more consistently than ones who just check in from time to time. Their voices are very discernible. It's pretty amazing to hear them come through what when we're in different locations. I can ask them to step aside and allow the spirits in the location to communicate, and I've even had them help during communication sessions, as well as I can possibly earn the respect and trust of the spirit who inhabited that particular location. I want to camp out at my friend's trampoline, which is on the edge of the tree line in their back forest. I think it would be fun to live stream, but the reality of investigating the paranormal is that it can be very unentertaining for a very long time. And then there can be upticks in activity that come seemingly out of nowhere. I've definitely had multiple other night vision cams running as well, though. Actually, doing paranormal investigations is so much different from the YouTube content and TV shows. A full 8 to 12 hours investigation will yield close to or above 100 hours of video, depending on how many static cams we have set up. And countless hours of digital recordings being used is all that we need. The EE thing about staying in the same spot is that I'll be able to tag specific times of suspicious occurrences. I'll give updates and links to the live as I'm able to, if I'm able to do the camping thing. Being from an area that is endless amounts of Native American history, I have always been very interested in skinwalkers. Now that I know someone who has had encounters right outside my home, my intrigue has become piqued to the max. And the replies go as, "Surely there is a reason behind this stuff. Like you're doing something you're not supposed to be, or you're disrespecting someone's property or so. Do you know anything about their purpose or boundaries? Like, can they not enter the house?" And someone else says, "If you're willing to camp outside right next to the tree line known for potential skinwalker activity, then you are a braver person than I." And comments go as, "I'm half Cree and part Navajo, and I'm telling you not to manifest this. I grew up with stories about them. Just talking about it is suspect. I live in Denmark, so I'm safe. Every country has its own creepy crawler, though. We have the Swamp Man. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I lived close to the forest next to a big swamp. I think it's supposed to be swamp, and they just spelled it differently. Um, but if it was a dream or what, and I remember seeing him one late winter night when I was 7 years old, out walking the dog. I ran home." Someone else says, "I live in India, and we have scary shape-shifting people there, too. Trolls from Denmark. You guys have trolls." Moving on, I have spent many nights alone in the forest trying to find something weird like this, but have never found anything that's happened, only ever ran into the occasional homeless person or natural predator. I've heard from several Navajo people that it only manifests them when they say the word skinwalker out loud in Navajo. Not trying to attack you or question what you've said or anything, just being curious and sharing what I'd heard. Someone replies with, also part Navajo. I've always been curious if anyone has tried camping out along the way of the Four Corners. 90% sure it's free too, but I've always wanted to know if people do and experience anything. Nope, I don't think I've encountered any skinwalkers before, though encountering one would be interesting and pretty creepy. I think I saw one in the same posture as the one pictured on the right. There's a picture above. I was driving on the freeway during the day, and it drove over the railroad tracks. As I turned my head left without thinking and looking down the tracks. It was on the tracks, same posture and black. I think that was mostly seen in the southwest U.S. What I saw here was in Rochester, Washington. Shit, now I'm concerned. Ain't no skinwalkers in Romania. No, but you got Dracula, they say. So, not a skinny boy, but a windy boy. I'd say the names. I won't say the names because I know there's a house near here that they come out of. Oh, well, protect yourself. Let's see. I live basically right by the Smoky Mountains. Never seen anything too strange, but you certainly get weird feelings of being watched out here. Now, here in Mexico, we have our own thing, nojulas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not. Both my dad and aunt claim they have had runnings with one of these when they were little. One was stalked them for several months after my grandma died. She died when they were both 7 and 12 years old. They were really poor and lived pretty much in a cabin in the middle of nowhere with my grandpa. They would hear scratches on the roof. My grandpa was sick all the time, and a shaman supposedly caught it. My uncle also claims his dad used to hunt those things, and remember how once his dad caught a dog who was a nahul, and tied it up and tortured it for a while until it started talking like a human, begging to his dad to let him go. It was heavy shit. I really haven't run into anything myself of this sort, but I always love hearing about these types of stories. And the replies go, are they very similar to skinwalkers, shapeshifters, and known to be mostly women? All I'm about to tell you is taken directly from stories I've heard since I was a young boy by people around me, so feel free to Google more information about them. They're ancient, and they have been mentioned since before the Spaniards came. They are supposed to be brujos, basically male witches, who are always most are always males who practice occultism and dark magic. This is old dark magic since it dates before Christianity, and even a thing hints why it's sometimes really powerful and difficult to deal with. They shapeshift, turn into animals in order to hide, move, run away, etc. A lot of them usually target kids, women, elderly, people who are more vulnerable. A lot of people claim they kidnap kids to eat them and use them in evil rituals. They can be killed, captured, but they are extremely dangerous. Where I live, the stories about Nujolas, again, I'm probably butchering that word, not as prominent anymore, at least not around common folk. But if you go to the little towns in Mexico, so-called pueblitos, you can hear more about them. Although most of the stories would picture them as bad and evil, some people claim they can also be good white witches, using their power for good and connect the spirit realm to others. What does a skinwalker actually look like? I looked it up in Google, and it says that in Navajo culture, they are believed to be a harmful witch who shapeshifts into any animal they want. There's not many photos of what they would look like, so how would you know one if you spotted one? They can look like however they want. They are shapeshifters. From what I've learned from a Navajo group on YouTube, they'll be able to change into any animal form, but only if they've been sacrificed and soul trapped an animal spirit. They are humans who practice evil magic and will live among other humans in plain sight. Unless someone has been on Navajo land, they are likely just encountered a run-of-the-mill shapeshifters, shape changers. Skinwalkers are a specific type of shapeshifter largely exclusive to the Navajo Nation. Typically a human witch who has undertaken a path of evil and grave sacrifice in order to gain black magical powers. See, I kind of doubt that it is only a Navajo thing. I think maybe the Navajo have good knowledge on the phenomenon, but if you read accounts of the same thing happening all over North America, why would it only relate to one tribe? When an indigenous nation claims something to be theirs, I take them at their word. Yeah, you should. But I do think there's probably maybe Skinwalker's too broad of a term. The shape shifting is probably a little more logical, realistic. Every culture has similar myths, though, or similar entities, beings, whatever. I don't know. But yeah. Let's see. Moving on. I grew up right next to Skinwalker Ranch, which is about 10 miles north of it, and my parents were friends with the original owners. They would tell us stories about all the crazy stuff that would go on, and our little child minds would eat them all up. Yes, at my grandma's house on a res. Never been so terrified. And they asked what happened, but let's see. It was very well known that skinwalkers are at this particular res, but especially in my wife's grandma's house. 4 people have seen red eyes in the basement, and she eventually moved homes. We were staying at her new place, and I hate staying there. It's creepy and just dark. So anyway, it's the middle of the night, and I can't sleep. I leave the room to go to the bathroom and practically ran as I felt very creeped out. For some reason, I looked out at my grandma's room and saw this huge fucking half-person, half-werewolf thing that was about 7 feet tall with red glowing eyes. I have never been so scared in all my life. I ran back into my room and woke up my wife to come to the bathroom with me. She's been there too, and that's not surprising. There have been another event where over 20 people witnessed a skinwalker in that town. No one will talk about it, though. One says, bro, it's your grandma. No, I haven't seen a skinwalker. I think skinwalkers are a form of Native American folklore like the vampire and wolfman from European sources. I don't take it seriously. I read once that the tale of these creatures may have been a way to discuss or explain serial killers in Native communities. Serial killers have been a thing long before there was a term for them. My sister-in-law always has weird stuff happening on her farm. It's been a lot of death there in the last. One night she was watching TV in the living room and she'd seen something walk past her window. Now the bottom of the window is 6 feet off the ground and the chest of this creature was near the top of the big window, so it had to be close to 9 feet. The next day she went out to see if there was anything, and there was a bunch of broken branches where she had seen it walk. She described it as very tall and white with a weird walk to it. She said it looked like a creature she'd seen before at a beach that walked out of the bush and walked like it was possessed. She's Metis and lives by a few reserves. I'm not sure what that means. We take the lake she'd seen it as was also on native land. In a small town 10 minutes from her house, there was a doctor from back in the early 1900s that went mad and killed and ate his wife and kids, and some of his patients and people say he turned into a Wendigo. That would probably do it, yeah. I'm curious if anyone here is First Nation. My grandma, aunts, uncles, and my mother have told me many stories, but artwork looks quite like what they described, honestly. I have only lived in Durango, Cortez, Colorado at the time, but would visit the res where my grandma lived near Blanding, Utah. My aunt lives down the road near Mexican Hat. A cousin who married a white man and lived in a house on the outskirts of Bluff, Utah, would tell us stories of living out there too. Things running over the roof and the door handles rattling. That's when I realized it's not just Navajos who have witnessed the phenomenon. Once, when I was a teenager, I was trying to sleep on my parents' couch in the dark living room. My dog was sleeping on my legs and out of nowhere started growling toward the windows. I turned my phone light on to see the face of a wolf looking inside. My dog runs, barking and growling at the window. I got up to turn on the light, and then I looked back. It was gone. The windows were probably 3 to 4 feet off the ground on the outside. We have coyotes in the area, so it's not impossible for them to look at out the windows. It didn't feel like a coyote, though. When I told someone what I saw, they told me about the Michigan dog man. My husband lived on the Navajo reservation for a while. He was packing up his bags at night and saw something move towards him at inhuman speed on all fours. He also heard a lot of night walking and nails on the roof of their shack that they were staying in. Well, I've shared this before. I have a story. It isn't mine, but it happened to my uncle. He used to tell the story when we went camping, and it got scared the lights out of me every time I heard it. We live in Utah, and my Uncle Mark went on a mission at 19. They sent him to an Indian reservation in Arizona. They paired him up with a companion named Carl. When they first got there, there was a huge rift from the locals on the reservation with them being there. I didn't want my uncle and Carl staying on the reservation grounds. Oh, they didn't. Eventually, they came to a compromise. They would stay on the outskirts in a trailer. This reservation wasn't very big and was located next to a heavily wooded area. The next night they were trying to sleep when all of a sudden their trailer started to shake violently back and forth. Startled and not sure what was happening, they climbed under their table for cover. Mark could instinctively hear someone pushing it from both sides of the trailer, like a group of people. After about 5 minutes, it stopped. That next day, they made the rounds on the reservation and they were talking to the locals. Carl made a comment that one of the families that their trailer was shaking the night before. The family got very quiet and then told them they had to leave. They thought it was strange, but they didn't think much of it. The next night, it happened again. They woke in their trailer shaking back and forth. Again, they climbed from under the table until it stopped. This went on for 2 more nights. Anytime they tried to talk to anyone about it, they got quiet and told them to leave. Mark started thinking that, due to the tension of their arrival, the locals were doing this to scare them off the reservation. Then they go to the convenience store, and they were talking together about how frustrated they were with the situation. The clerk overheard them and said, "They can't talk about it. It's forbidden." Confused, they asked him, "Can't talk about what?" The guy started to tell them about the Skinwalkers. He says they are evil demons. They were once Native American witches. As they talk about it, the Skinwalkers will come for their souls. They just walked out of there baffled. They thought it was another scare tactic. So that night, when the shaking started, my uncle decided to be brave and confront them. He went to the trailer door, flew it open, and yelled, "Hey!" When he did that, he saw 3 animals run off. 2 were a wolf and 1 was a bear. But they looked strange, almost with human features. As he watched them run towards the trees, all 3 stood up on 2 legs and walked slowly toward the trees, making a human cackling laugh. It scared him so bad, they called their mission president the next morning and asked to be moved. They were relocated that day. For a year, nothing happened. One day, they announced that Carl had been relocated to another city and Mark was getting a new companion, Jimmy. They had to drive for about an hour to pick Jimmy up from the airport. The road they traveled went with the boundaries of the reservation. They arrived at about 8 p.m. and met Jimmy, and they go to leave. The mission president tells Jimmy, "We are driving through a dangerous area at night, so don't make any stops. If you need to use the restroom, you need to go now." Jimmy says, "I'm fine." The mission president gets serious, even though enough to even freak out Mark. "I am not kidding. Go do your business." Jimmy was insistent that he was fine, so they hit the road. As they were about 30 minutes into the drive, they were going through the area of the reservation boundaries. Jimmy starts complaining that he needs to pee badly. The mission president says, "We can't stop here. You'll just have to hold it." Jimmy keeps going on, "I really can't hold it." So the mission president stops the car and says, "Okay, but you will do your business next to the door. And if I say get in the car, you better get into the car fast." With a look of confusion, Jimmy says, "All right," opens the door and starts to do his business. In about 5 seconds, the mission president says nothing and just yanks Jimmy back into the car and floors it. Jimmy and Mark start freaking out. What is going on? The mission president says nothing and just increases his speed. All of a sudden, Mark sees something next to the car to his right. A giant wolf-looking man was running on 2 feet next to the car. Mark looks at the speedometer, and they were going over 60 miles an hour and still increasing. The wolf creature kept right next to the car for 10 minutes until it finally took off into the trees. Shaking, Jimmy gets out of the car when they arrive. They didn't speak through the whole ordeal and says, "What did I just see?" The mission president says, "Next time I tell you to take care of your business, you take care of your business." I have spent lots of time in the Arizona woods, camping, walking, hunting. Walking through them at night alone many times to and from with hunting locations. Never scared, but one time I was in Springerville on the border of New Mexico. Springerville? Okay, there's Springer, and there's lots of places with Ville at the end, but I'm not sure. Hunting elk. Okay, it's probably not the same place, so we don't have any elk. I stayed up on the little plateau until it got dark for me to see with my rifle scope crosshairs. I started walking back down to the truck about 3 miles away. I was minding my business, not thinking anything scary or whatever, when all of a sudden I was hit with this feeling of immense dread and the forest around me and the dead-ass silent. I got the feeling I was being watched. All of the hair on my arms and neck, and I got instant goosebumps. I froze in place, started looking around as the feeling increased. I slung my bolt-action rifle and got out my pistol thinking I would pump some shots into whatever it was if it tried to charge. I did a very slow 360 with my pistol at a very high ready. Didn't see anything. Mind you, it was almost dark. My voice in my head literally told me, "You need to get the F out of this mountain right now." So I ran like hell with my pistol out. I know you're not supposed to run from predators, but that's how scared I was. I've never felt like that before. I ran so damn fast, looking over my shoulder about this whole time. It was the fastest and furthest I've ever run, and I got away from that area a good bit. The feeling subsided, and I broke out my flashlight. Had a peaceful walk back to the car, but I checked over my shoulder every few minutes. I don't know what it was, but there was something there. I've had a few encounters with them. I will say that saying the name out loud manifests them, so I wouldn't recommend it. A lot of strange whistling at night. If you hear that, it was probably because them as well. For anyone wondering about skinwalkers, a skinwalker can only wear the skin of an animal that they have to perform a ritual on, and they can cover their entire body. They also can perform the ritual to wear a skin on one of the 4 mountain tops. On top of this, they can only travel a distance that will allow them to go back to that mountain to turn back. Look up Shan Quinn Shadow Production on YouTube if you want to learn more about what an actual skinwalker is. My mom dated a guy who was big into hunting. The guy told me a story of a time he encountered something that scared him to this day and made him quit hunting altogether. I guess him and his buddies went to Alaska to hunt big game. They had stopped at some point to get supplies, and I guess one of the locals had warned them to stay away from the area, especially at night. They had to go through the area, or close to the area, to get what they needed to hunt. So one of the guys asks why they shouldn't be in that area. The man simply and swiftly replied, "Just don't." He thought it was weird and brushed it off, seeing as how they wouldn't be specifically in that area at night if they needed to camp. Also, they had their weapons, too. So they all headed out. So I guess with the issues in the area, had extreme weather which caused them to detour. So they found themselves in the area with locals who warned them about. Nightfall came and the fire was lit. They started talking about eating snacks when it was getting late, so one of the guys went to the tent to sleep and the other guy sat by the fire. I guess not long after what they had heard the screeching or wailing sound coming from the dark woods. It seemed far from them, but the harder they listened, the closer it seemed to get, and fast. The guy who had gone to bed first got his gun and walked right out of the tent to see what the fuck. The screeching sound got louder and closer, so he fired off a couple of rounds, carelessly, into the dark woods. Then it stopped. And I guess what happened next was they started to feel like whatever it was circling them. So I guess they started firing all around, kind of like the movie Predator. Careless, I know, but yeah. I guess they went on all night. When they passed out, all of their guns were gone. All the stuff shredded the trees around them and had claw marks. He says there was only 3 deep claw marks like this thing ran and clawed the trees. He said no tracks of any sort. They all left fast and told everybody the story. Next stories. I haven't, but my father and his now deceased friend did. And it's important to note that said friend, I'll call him by his nickname, Law, was Navajo. My dad was staying with him and his family, and they lived near a desert. I don't remember which one. They went out to the desert, just the 2 of them. I don't remember any specifics, so it's not real dramatic or anything. But they did see a person a little ways away walking across the desert. Not too close, but not too far. As they couldn't see, he was wearing animal skin, which wasn't that odd. But they've seen him transform into a man, from a man to a coyote. They immediately booked it as they thought they couldn't hear him. Sorry if it wasn't all that interesting. Like I said, I don't remember specifics because it's been almost a year since I heard that story. I'm a little late to the party. Back in 2019, I went on a missions trip with my old church's youth group to Montana. He went to a Native American reservation for 2 to 3 weeks. It was right before I started my freshman year of high school, and everyone was around that age and was getting close to sundown. We had decided to play manhunt. The area of the reservation we were on had an open field that was surrounded by the woods, and I decided to go as far as I could. I was hiding and heard one of my friends, who was on my team, calling my name, and it sounded far away, but in the opposite direction of our camp setup. So I started walking towards him, and I kept hearing it, but it was constantly sounded far away. I kept going until I saw a decrepit deer. It was about 150 feet away, or yards away, from the camp at this point, and I turned around and booked it without looking back. By the time I got back to the camp, I saw everyone chilling, doing their own thing, and I went up to the person who had heard calling me, and they said they had stopped playing 10 minutes before I came back, and they just thought I was in the bathroom at one of the porta potties. Until I heard of Skinwalkers, I had no true explanation behind what had happened, and I still don't know for 100%. Well, there you go. I hope you enjoyed that video. Hope you go listen to another one. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.